Welcome back to the Pre-Vegans Podcast, where we help you take that first step toward a kinder, healthier world. On today's episode, we've got a question from our mailbag about getting enough protein on a vegan diet, a deep dive into the truth about processed meat, is plant-based really worse than animal meat, and an incredible vegan origin story from none other than Matt Frazier, the no-meat athlete. And now, let's welcome your host, Sean A. Russell.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you've been rocking with us for a while, thank you for being part of this amazing community. Let's jump right into today's mailbag question from Amelia from Sydney, Australia.
How do I make sure I'm getting enough protein on a vegan diet?
Great question, Amelia. And honestly, this is the number one question every vegan gets asked. But the truth is, getting enough protein on a plant-based diet is easier than most people think. Legumes like lentils, chickpeas, and black beans are packed with protein. Tofu, tempeh, and seitan, these are complete protein sources that work in almost any dish. Nuts, seeds, and grains, hemp seeds, quinoa, and almonds add an extra protein boost. Even vegetables, yes, even greens like spinach and broccoli contain protein. And if you're an athlete or need extra protein, there are high-quality plant-based protein powders available too. So Amelia, as long as you're eating a variety of whole plant foods, you're more than covered. Speaking of protein and meat, that brings us right to our first segment, the truth about processed meat. Let's break down the myths, the realities, and how meat is processed and whether plant-based alternatives are actually any worse.
The truth about processed foods. Are plant-based alternatives really worse than animal meat? One of the most common arguments against plant-based meats is that they're too processed, as if traditional animal meat is always a pure, natural option. But here's the reality. Many animal-based meats are also highly processed, sometimes even more than plant-based alternatives. Let's break it down. The word processed simply means that a food has been changed from its natural state. Washing, freezing, chopping, those are all forms of processing. But when people talk about processed foods negatively, they usually mean ultra-processed foods, the ones packed with artificial additives, preservatives, and chemicals. So, how processed is animal meat? Let's take a closer look. Chicken, not as natural as you think. Many chickens are fed antibiotics to speed up growth. After slaughter, they're soaked in chlorine baths to kill bacteria. Some are injected with salt solutions to enhance flavor and texture, making them unnaturally high in sodium. And fast food nuggets? Many contain more fillers and additives than actual chicken. Farmed salmon, the processed reality. Farmed salmon are treated with antibiotics and pesticides due to overcrowding in fish farms. Their pink color? It's not natural. Wild salmon get their hue from krill and plankton, but farmed salmon are fed synthetic dye to make them look more appealing. Smoked and canned fish? They're often cured with nitrates and preservatives, which come with potential health risks. Processed beef and deli meats, a chemical cocktail. Processed meats like bacon, ham, and sausage contain nitrates, which the World Health Organization has classified as carcinogens, directly linked to cancer. Some ground beef contains pink slime, a mix of beef scraps treated with ammonia. Many processed meats are packed with sodium and preservatives to extend shelf life. Now, let's compare all of this to plant-based meats. A plant-based burger like Beyond Meat or Impossible Burger contains whole plant proteins from peas, soy, or wheat, natural coloring from beets or apple extract, not synthetic dye, 0 antibiotics, 0 hormones, and no ammonia treatments. Fewer harmful additives than many processed animal meats. While plant-based meats do go through processing, so does almost everything we eat today. The real question is, what's actually in the food? If processing is the concern, then chicken, fish, and beef should raise the same red flags, if not more. Next time someone says, plant-based meat is too processed, ask them, do you eat fast food, deli meats, or bacon? Do you know how many chemicals go into conventional meat? If processing is bad, why not hold all foods to the same standard? At the end of the day, choosing whole, minimally processed plant foods is always the best option. But if you're looking for convenience, plant-based meats are often a cleaner, more ethical, and more sustainable choice than what's happening in the meat industry. So, let's be honest about food processing. The facts might surprise you.
Wow, crazy, right? The next time someone tells you that plant-based meats are too processed, remind them about all the chemicals, preservatives, and treatments hidden in conventional meat. All right, now let's shift gears and hear an incredible vegan origin story. If you've ever wondered, can I be an athlete on a vegan diet? The next guest will inspire you. Matt Frazier is the founder of No Meat Athlete, a best-selling author and a plant-based endurance athlete. He's run ultra marathons, trained on plants, and built a global community of vegan athletes. How did he go from being a regular guy to proving that plants fuel performance at the highest level? Let's hear his story.
I, didn't know anything about what vegetarian or vegan was growing up. It was not part of my family's story in any way. But when I got into college, I started getting into fitness with some friends, and just like weightlifting and stuff like that. But we said, for some reason, just crazy college kids, we said, hey, what if we would run a marathon? Like, that would be really cool. We could do it. We would lose a bunch of fat. And why couldn't we do that? Even though we're not runners and don't know anything about it, like, sure, let's just go run a marathon. So we decided we were going to do that, but not just qualify. We were going to also not just run a marathon, but also qualify for the Boston Marathon, which back then took a 3-hour and 10-minute marathon to do it. And so we did train for a marathon. We did cross the finish line, but instead of 3 hours and 10 minutes, it took us 4 hours and 53 minutes. So we missed that goal by like 103 minutes, which is about 4 minutes per mile too slow. And that, for some reason, something about it sparked this thing in me where I said, I have to find a way to do that. Like, I can't fail that big at a goal and just never go back to it. It just wasn't, I don't know, it just didn't seem right. So I started thinking about it, like, wow, what would it take to do that? And I got really inspired by what type of person, how disciplined, all these things that I would have to become to do that. And I set off on this journey to do it. I didn't know it would take as long as it did, but about 5 years into that journey, when I had taken 90 minutes off my time, I got inspired for really just personal ethical reasons to become vegetarian. I didn't know what vegan was, didn't even know that was an option really. But I just imagined, like, what if I could stop eating animals? Because I had fallen in love with this dog that I had and, was eating pigs and everything like everyone else. And I put together, like, wow, a pig is like just as smart and feels as much as a dog. Like, how can I eat that animal and love this one so much? And so I wanted to find a way to make that work. And one of the huge hurdles in my mind was like protein. And I just didn't know that there were people who ran marathons as vegetarians. I thought it was a really strange thing to do. Just shows you what kind of my conditioning had been. And so I looked around for some information about it and couldn't find anything. This was 2009, so the internet, it was developed somewhat, but there just wasn't a big vegan, especially not a vegan fitness scene happening yet. So I couldn't find anything. And I said, well, I'm gonna do this. I'm just gonna write how this goes down. I'm going to share all this, the recipes and whether it's working or isn't, because it just seemed like a weird thing to be a marathoner and a vegetarian. And the great, amazing surprise was that it worked really, really well for my training. And just 6 months after I made that shift, I qualified for Boston, took those final 10 minutes off my time, which was no small thing to take those final 10 minutes off, because at that point, I had kind of exhausted everything. I didn't know how I would get 10 more minutes faster. So to find this surprise that somehow a diet that I thought was going to be a hindrance ended up being the thing that allowed me to finally do it, it was incredible. And then that's in that process, having started the website, that's when I started to hear about people like Scott Jurek, who had been doing this for years in the ultra running scene, Brendan Brazier, who had a book called Thrive back then, really, really great book, met Robert Cheek, who you mentioned a minute ago. And I realized that a lot of these people were doing it, they were being 100% vegan, not just vegetarian, and some of them were doing it for performance reasons, like not just as an ethical thing, but they did it because it offered them the best recovery and other things. So once I learned about that, and now that I had qualified for Boston, my goal shifted to run an ultramarathon, run 50 miles, run 100 miles. And I said it would be really cool to do that on a vegan diet. And I thought the vegan diet might actually help me do that. So I kept going further. And then about 2 years after the vegetarian, transition, I finally completed this transition to 100% vegan. And so when I did my last 50 miler or my 100 miler, they were 100% vegan. And then I guess that was 2013. Just did, no meat athlete since then, grown this amazing community and writing some books, giving some talks, all that kind of stuff. And here we are.
Huge shout out to Matt Frazier for sharing his journey. If you're into fitness or just looking for motivation, check out No Meat Athlete. His content is packed with plant-powered wisdom. And of course, thank you for listening. If you've got a question for the next episode, send it in. We'd love to feature it. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and stay compassionate. See you soon.
You're listening to the Pre-Vegans podcast found on the Vegans Explore Network. For more episodes and to learn how to participate in the Pre-Vegans Challenge, be sure to visit prevegans.com. Today's episode was edited and produced by Sean A. Russell.